Hi. So here I am. I was just thinking as this was loading up how like I'm kind of tired and puffy today. And I just thought like honestly I thought about how like how much this means to me to get this out into the world, and as a result of it, it's like it's been interesting that I'm a lot less preoccupied with whether I look good or not enough to do it. So I'm here and I'm really happy to be here. So, as I've been reading these chapters, so here we are, and if you're following along, this is I'm at page 42. And so, what I've been doing is I've just been reading through and I've just been talking about the stuff that arises as I go along and, just practicing just like really just being in front of the camera, getting comfortable with it. And also there's a couple like, additional values here, which is rereading this because it is like super valuable to me to reprocess this and like go through it again because I get a lot of value as I read it. And it also gives me a lot of empathy for people who are talking to me about their experiences with reading it and realizing, like that there's challenge in this work. So one thing I'm going to just make note of is that as the book has been out, so, people had asked me if I'd wanted to do this really like intense promotional launch on this, which I didn't. It was more interesting to me to have a smaller number of a couple hundred people reading it and listening to people as they processed it. Because the thing is there's another part of this, which is that it takes people time, and in that time, it's been really valuable for me to see what people need and also what people respond to and what's valuable. Because if you're in the book, it's like pretty comprehensive as far as what it addresses. So, it's like right now I'm really working on it's like, how do you find the quick wins for people? And one of the things I've been working on is negotiation and conflict as it relates to nervous system regulation. So, yeah. So if you're joining, thank you for watching. It is, it means the world to me. Every time I see a view, I just of any duration, it like it just means a lot to me, which is, it's funny because, I've been thinking a lot about how right now I'm divesting from all of my, I guess, like conventional, like roles, which are, conventional and as far as being well compensated and, sort of, I guess like conventionally highly respected to do something that is further in my integrity, which is I really want this work and the value and like what it can actually do for people to be out in the world. So here we are. So thanks for being along for the ride. So I'm just gonna read as much as I can. I feel like it gets me a little googly eyed as I get into this. And yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like it's kind of it's really interesting as far as expanding nervous system capacity, that this actually kind of expands my capacity in a way where it's kind of like challenging to read this and be processing it and doing it in real time. Like sometimes I can feel my body heat elevating. Sometimes I can feel myself kind of like getting sort of zoned out a little bit and sort of tired by it. My eyes getting tired, my brain getting a little bit tired. So, it's really my aspiration to see that expand. So anyway, thank you again if you're watching this. I'm just gonna dip right in and see how far I can get with reading. Like I finished up yesterday with the Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, and so we're really at a point of this book, which is about the importance of authenticity. And I saw a quick little video yesterday on TikTok talking about how MIT had used the Spain scale to validate the the science that emotions actually have wavelengths. and that the strongest wavelength is not love. The strongest wavelength, 4 times stronger than love, is authenticity, and authenticity being that you're expressing what you believe in, and so that it comes from being, like, telling the truth and believing what you're saying. So, I so this it's actually, like, right in line with this. So, and this is also it's kind of like your authenticity also, along with the fact that it's a unique thing, and that your authenticity and, like, who you are and the spectacularness of that is a very bespoke, special thing that, that there's, that has its own configuration, that may very likely, like, I mean, almost like how could it not exist outside the sort of like the range of what's kind of considered to be valuable. So, and specifically being like the, math, science, reading, writing, and, the kind of curated version of history. So yeah, so continuing on, this is page 42 if you're following along in the book, after Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. So here we go. So logic, math, and linguistics are important skills and talents in our professional lives, but the skills and talents supporting career advancement include many of the other intelligences, specifically inter and intrapersonal ones. There's more than a passing alignment with Gardner's multiple intelligences and the hubs of the Parinama method. For example, the second hub with bodily kinesthetic, the fifth hub with linguistic, and the sixth hub with spatial. The narrative that most people work under protest and are mediocre is not scientifically validated. We work under protest when we're not afforded the human dignity of autonomy and independence, and the opportunity to get better at something. And like the opportunity to get better at something and the opportunity to connect with purpose. Mediocrity is a condition of hopelessness placed on a human. It is not human nature. Important. Unaffected people are not afraid to be themselves. The adult advice to early adolescents that they should just be themselves is well-meaning and wise, but falls short because it doesn't acknowledge a practical caveat. Being fully yourself is hard to do when your identity is tied to social belonging. But the charisma that we surrendered for social belonging in early school at early school age is still present, restoring and strengthening our hubs around personal integrity and thawing frozen behavior patterns not only transforms how we feel, but also how people respond to us. Yeah, that's good. It's good. I'm glad I'm rereading this. The realization of the consequences of conformity as an outcrop of the need to belong can come when it's too late. Former hospice. So I'm going to reread that. I was actually a little zoned out when I was reading that. Um, so the realization of the consequences of conformity as an outcrop of the need to belong can come when it's too late. Former hospice nurse Bonnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, explores in detail what she learned as she cared for people in their final days. Ware cites the most common deathbed regret. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. See chapter 13. I think this is this is honestly is like such a important theme of this, like what I call this book and this framework is this re-reconciliation of the conditions that shaped us in our in our early development that have taken us out of like what I'd consider to be a natural integrity. It just out like as adaptations for survival. Like, and it's not necessarily like parents who did it. It's not necessarily like even like peers or whatever. It's like it's kind of this like combination of societal factors and even our parents having been influenced by conditions that were beyond their control and grandparents and so forth. So but this just I was really when I was writing this book, I was really fascinated. There are a couple More than a couple. There are a lot of, books that I read that really impacted my sense of, like, sort of orientation in this, and one of them was Bronnie Ware's book, and, I get more into that later, but it really fascinated me, and, again, this notion that the strongest emotion is authenticity, and that the search to come back to that, and the importance of it as it being a potential deathbed regret to not fully be yourself. I mean, it's you see this stuff explored in all like, sort of disparately all over the place, but, I think it's something that inherently we all relate to is this kind of, tension of being separated from our true selves. So, there's a lot that could be said on that, and I really look forward to the time when this is gonna be a a more of a conversation than me just talking to a lens. I really look forward to doing book clubs and having more open discussions about this content. So I'm going to keep reading. The next section is Our Nature is Nature. So when we don't connect with the natural world, we tend to feel disconnected from our lives. When we bring attention to our connection to everything around us, we better understand ourselves. The radical acceptance that's possible produces a charisma and a dynamism that exists in this full experience of life and rejects the punishing notions of purity and perfectionism. When we're in rhythm and feel connected, we experience ourselves as part of life rather than apart from it. And as the natural world shows us, the path isn't a straight line. It's cyclical and rhythmic. We continually come back to things we thought we understood to find deeper truths. The transformation process has practical limits for what we can tolerate and what to leave alone. As we see in nature, there's no sanitized perfection or complete resolution of anything. There will always be memories, pain, and issues. We have the attics, basements, and junk drawers of our lives. There's no fixed state of physical perfection. The purity is a conceptual standard. Instead, we seek personal integrity. Ideals like perfectionism, full resolutions, and purity can control us through disgust, impure, gross, fat, and or shame, sloppy, unworthy, fat, and cause the false belief that you are fundamentally flawed, a problem needing to be solved, optimized, and or fixed, and that you must be productive to deserve dignity. None of these things is true. It's the belief in these controlling ideas that's the problem. We are all alive, changing, moving, and messy. We have partners, children's, and pets and plants that show us, if we allow ourselves to see, that life is moving, reorienting, and shifting. If we're rigid and frozen against natural rhythms of the very nature of life, we miss the experience of it. We're better able to understand ourselves and to navigate life's fluctuations by being aware of the rhythms, cycles, and patterns of our natural world. This theme is repeated in different ways throughout the hubs, but here I provide a primer on perspective through paradox, and ambiguity. Wow, that's actually really nice to reread. It's yeah. It's also remembering that, the order, people have, expressed the challenge of reading the book as a cover to cover book. And as I'm reading this, it's reminding me that I actually wrote these all like almost everything like kind of in its own sequence. And this part, chapter 3, was very much connected to chapter 10, which is the seventh hub, the upper hubs. And when I was writing those, there's kind of this cycling of like reading, writing, refining, and then like coming back to other parts in the book as it related to them. And it was and this was very like that the notion that it was like, oh, this is like kind of this full circle, and that chapter 3 is pointing to a bigger picture of where like really where this like work takes us. So yeah, it's really, really, it's quite beautiful actually. My gosh. Um, to reread that, it's like, wow. Parallax, an ever-changing perspective. Your perspective on life is the result of your unique inclinations combined with specific experiences, circumstances, level of maturity, and other variables that add up to being a life that's completely yours. Parallax goes deeper into our concept of what it means to have perspective. It not only considers your relative position to something, but also how the direction and speed of travel influence perception. Instead of perspective or context, I use parallax because how we're oriented and how we approach something affects how we perceive it. Also, orientation and approach shift and change throughout our lives, and parallax introduces the reality that perspective and context are always moving and changing. We may agree with people on important things, but if we're honest, we rarely, if ever, agree on everything. Even choosing how and what we focus on influences our perspective. Try taking a picture of the moon. The camera's viewfinder introduces a broader perspective until we actively shift its focus. Until we zoom in, the massive moon seen but with the naked eye is a pinprick of light in the vast sky. Grasping the reality that our perspective and the factors that affect it is unique to us not only grants us our singular version of reality, but also opens the aperture for awareness and respect for the views of others. We all hold certainties based on the experiences that shape our lives, but if we feel like someone wants to understand us, we're more likely to hear them out and vice versa. Your perspective and internal truth shared humanity, which in turn is woven from threads. We are all entwined, sharing the same experience from different positions. That's nice. Complementary opposites. We encounter paradox when seemingly opposite things embrace the existence, or that's me. All right. We encounter paradox when seemingly opposite things enhance the existence of each other. For example, activity makes rest satisfying. Black makes white stand out, as white does black. And we can feel most alive after having come close to death. When we look closely, we can notice that opposites tend to be complementary and together contribute to an emerging property and even breakthroughs of possibility. Each hub has one or more of these dichotomies in which one polarity cannot exist alone, such as pushing into our feet or seat to rise upwards. A central repeating paradox is the need to belong that exists with the need to be free, the need to both follow your own arrow and find safety in the quiver. Below, I list some of the paradoxes of our hubs. Roots to grow, pushing down to rise, attraction and repulsion, magnetism, intimacy and distance, absence makes the heart grow fonder, individuality, personal freedom and belonging, connection, gratitude, receiving, and generosity, giving, speaking, finding the words, and listening, seeking to understand, creating, self expression, and validation, being seen, knowing, certainty, and remaining curious, open to new ideas. Complementary opposites, see chapters 6 and 7, are strengthened by the existence of each other, as if on a spectrum of hot and cold with infinite possible temperatures in between. Awareness of complementary opposites helps us better understand ourselves. Sometimes we want to be with people, sometimes we want to be alone. These dichotomies in our lives are dynamic, constantly evolving and changing, and exist on a continuum in the ambiguity and nuance of infinite possibilities. The difference between paradox and hypocrisy is that in a paradox, two polarities can be simultaneously true, which is the opposite of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy confronts us with two irreconcilable demands, such as a mother who tells her child, "You're not affectionate enough," but when the child shows affection, says, "You're acting like a big baby." Hypocrisy says one thing and does another, a double bind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And there's no way to win. But paradox strengthens its opposing force. And like a cool drink on a scorching hot day, greater capacity is realized through opposition. Hot and cold accentuate each other. unlike mixed messages that negate one another. Woo, that's good. It's good. All right. I'm gonna read the ambiguity, and then I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Oh, I could keep going though. I really like this. Ah, yeah. This is actually bringing back a lot of really great memories. Like, I mean, specifically being in the space of writing and creating this, because I mean, um, the whole process of writing the book was like entering into a place that, I kind of remain like homesick for. A place that it's just like of being able to be in this really like deep experiential like level of contemplation and be working really hard. I mean, that's another thing as I'm reading this, I can recall like how much work, how many times like this was written and rewritten, and how many times like other factors like helped refine it. Coming back to it, with Allison, my editor, just how hard we worked for this. It's really great to read it. Feels really good. So ambiguity and continuum versus polarity. Ambiguity is the infinity between two seemingly polarized opposites. There are countless shades of gray found between black and white. And when we attempt to pick a paint color, the different hues and tones appear endless. An apple is in the grocery store and an apple core in the trash can are seemingly two different things, but they exist on a continuum from seed to compost. An apple is a moment in time, and gray comes in numerous tints that can all be called by the same word, gray. Between apple and core and black and white is a field of infinite possibility. We expand our ability to see and appreciate nuance through awareness of the extensive possibilities between so-called absolutes. Absolutism, this is good, that is bad, is suitable for the level of brain development in younger children. But as adults, part of maturation is expanding our belief system to consider options outside our current thought patterns. Folks who are prone to absolutism tend to see the world as a place where nothing but the so-called best is acceptable. We can know a lot about people when they speak in absolutes, specifically that they could benefit from compassion. And when we are prone to speaking in absolutes, we can know a lot about ourselves, specifically that softening absolute positions opens us to greater possibilities. We often resist ambiguity because it points to a less certain and less controllable universe. First hub stability supports the inner sense of containment and solid ground needed to feel more secure in and tolerate the intellectual ambiguity necessary to understand yourself. After all, we contain multitudes. See chapter 5. A polarized worldview makes understanding ourselves difficult. In an absolutist worldview, when we do something considered bad, we may believe ourselves to be a bad person. Making a mistake doesn't make you a mistake. Without a range of ambiguity, there is no room for redemption. Without the continuum between absolutes, there's no way to fully accept ourselves. And only when we accept ourselves can we be free to accept others. It's nice. Yeah. I feel like I almost could keep going, but I'm not going to, because the next section that we get into kind of is like a whole thing. And it just might be better to like natural rhythms, so cycles, and then the ebbs and flows, highs and lows. Yeah. And one of the things about this is that it's like, people, folks who are trying to like read through it quickly, which I understand, just because it's like satisfying to like read something. This is like even just reading that, and knowing notionally what's coming, the contemplation about like what's underlying with those concepts is like a seismic shift. And like even even like the thing about like a good or a bad person, the fact that these are just kind of constructs that are really punishing. And, especially like punishing where it's like if you do something bad, it's like, does that make you a bad person now? Like when people say, they're a good person, they're a bad person, which is just sort of like this like holistic assessment of a person based off of an impression or some actions, which seems like it's a nice thing to say, somebody's a good person. But I mean, really, like, how could such a thing exist as like somebody who's just good or somebody who's just bad, when the reality is like we all do things that are like wonderful and we all do things that are terrible. It's just part of being alive, and I think that the more that we negate the negative sides of ourselves, the harder it is for us to see them and reconcile them and understand their sources. And as a result of them, that I think they have stronger staying power because it's like the more that, it's like by not looking at negative qualities or hurtful qualities, it's just, they just don't like they just no work is done on them. There's no expansion, there's no awareness. So just some of the things about polarity and accepting those, I don't know if it made it into the book, but I had this, it was in a draft. It was in a draft of the manuscript, but I'd worked with this attorney. And I remember we were talking about Sandler sales training, which for some of you may be familiar with, and like one of the notions of it is just, first of all, that like people don't like to see themselves as a bad person, but I forget, like, I was really blown away by how insightful at the time, like this is like probably 18 years ago now, how insightful I found it. And I remember I remember this attorney who's an in-house, like the executive VP of our HR and whatever. We're just talking, like we're working through some type of project, and so I was just talking to him. It was just a chat, and I remember he just looked at me. He goes, yeah, like, and he just said very matter of factly. He said, you know what? Oh, it was what that people don't like to help people who are better off than they are. And I remember, so it wasn't related to this at all. It was more that the insight came just as a kind of unintended consequence. But it was and he just said to me, you know what, some days I'm an asshole. Because sometimes I just do things that like where I'm just an asshole. He's like, sometimes I'll cut people off. He's like, that, but holistically, he's like, it's not really like a behavior pattern. He's like, just some days that's where I'm at. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know, that might have been one of the first times. I don't know about you, but I have very strong memories about the first time a person disclosed to me kind of like an unapologeticness of being truly who they are in a way that is like culturally stigmatized, which is to just owning the fact it's like sometimes I do things that are just kind of shitty. Like, because he was saying sometimes, because he was specifically talking about cutting people off. Because yeah, sometimes I cut people off. Sometimes I'm an asshole. And and there's another memory I have, which was um, where Liz, my sister, had just said to me, there was a guy that I'd been dating that I was really young, and everyone was sick of it because he was such a, kind of pain in the ass. And I remember I stopped, I kind of was like not telling people that we were together. I was young, as a kid, but whatever. Like, I mean, I think adults do this kind of stuff too. I might even be capable of it. No, I don't think I would be. But, and I remember that she just looked at me. She goes, "Oh yeah," and I forget exactly how she said it, but she goes, "Oh yeah, remember this guy that I dated? Everybody felt the same way." She goes, "It's yeah," and she just immediately was just accepted the fact that I was doing something that was like inherently stupid and just it didn't change her perspective of me because she's like, "Yeah, I've been there." And that was something that, like, that interaction was, like, really mind-blowing for me, and, I guess counterintuitively is it's one of the things that helped me kind of break out of being in that particular relationship because I could honestly begin to talk with somebody about it who wasn't judging me and how much that was meaningful to me. But anyway, so I've gone on for like a while and I loved it. I loved it. So please, so anyway, please, if there's anything you want covered, if you've any questions, if you're reading, if you're finding anything challenging, if you're finding anything really like helpful, any comments, it like literally give me so much life. It means the world to me to hear from you and it's just so meaningful for me to be showing up for you. It feels like really the only thing right now that like matters. I'm sure there's other stuff, but it's just there's such a deep sense of wanting to do this. So please like write in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe. I love having you along for the ride. It just really means the world to me. And anything that you like want to be um, inputting to be shaping the content, I'm really open and welcoming it. So again, thank you so much. I love you, and I can't wait to see you next time. All right, bye.